I'm a 32-year-old woman who can never go back to my new dentist after 2 visits because I'm an idiot. My dentist is a very nice and professional man. Our first appointment was going pretty smoothly until he made some innocuous remark about us being strangers. My immediate reply was, "Oh, you're not a stranger. You've been inside of my mouth for 20 minutes. I did not intend to make a joke. His face turned red, and he was clearly embarrassed, but continued on like a true professional. And we were probably both relieved when the appointment was over. I had my second dentist appointment today. I actually mentally prepared myself to be a model patient who didn't say anything weird. He had been working in my mouth for about 5 minutes when he started to seem really uncomfortable or something. His face was red, and he was breathing a little heavier. I was a bit concerned and also confused. Like, how could I have embarrassed him this time? I had hardly spoken. So he keeps working in there, and then I realize what the hell is happening. My dentist was wearing grape-flavored gloves. I had been absent-mindedly licking his fingers the whole time.
Awkward.
No. But why was he breathing heavier?
This just might be the craziest spring break story you've ever heard. Me and 14 of my friends decided to go to Cabo for spring break when we were in college. We rented an Airbnb and thought everything was going to be so much fun. But on the first night, there was already a couple of my friends that were too tired to go out, so we just decided to split up. Half of my friends stayed at the house and half of us went out to a bar. The bar we ended up going to was right on the water, and as we're sitting there eating our food, a yacht pulls up. And I don't mean like a small yacht, I mean like a huge party yacht. There was little dinghy boats bringing people to and from the yacht. My friend that spoke Spanish went over and started talking to one of the boat taxi drivers. He said that if we wanted to, we could all jump on his boat and he would take us out to the yacht. Since it was spring break, of course I couldn't pass up on this opportunity, so I started running towards his boat to jump on because he was screaming for us to hurry. I was in such a hurry to make sure that I got on that boat, I didn't even look back to see if my friends were behind me. By the time that I realized none of my friends had come with me, I was already halfway to the yacht.
Storytime about my shitty-ass ex-boyfriend. So a little background information. My ex and I have been dating for about 2 years. And throughout those 2 years, he was a dick. He would cheat on me, talk to other girls more than me, but of course I pretended that everything was perfect in my relationship. I would brag to all these people about how my relationship was so good, blah blah blah, and everything else. Because it's embarrassing whenever bitches can talk shit because your relationship is very toxic. Like, listen to this bullshit. The whole 2 years we were dating, I had over 10 girls DM me on Instagram saying that they screwed my boyfriend at his house. I never confronted him about it. I was just one of those girls that cared way too much about what everybody else thought. Okay, now fast forward. And it was a Friday at school, and Thanksgiving break was the following day. And him and I have this whole plan to spend the whole break together, because literally a week before that he was on vacation in North Carolina for 2 whole weeks. Well, instead of going with him after school, I decided to go home, get an overnight bag. Storytime about my shit. Part 2 about my shitty ex-boyfriend. So like I said, the original plan was for us to go together to his house after school. But I was like, I'm going to be spending the whole week over there. I should probably pack some clothes and get a shower. So after school, he drove me to my house. And he said that his parents wanted to have dinner together, so he had to go back to his house. And he would pick me up later. So when I got to my house, I got ready and everything, blah, blah, blah. And by this time, it was like 8 o'clock. Well, I kept texting and calling him, asking him where he's at, if he's coming to get me still. Then I realized that none of my text messages were going through. So then I go to text him on Snap. And what do you know? I couldn't find him on there. And then I call him off my mom's phone. He answers the phone and hangs up right away. Well, we were supposed to have a little party at his house too, that all of my friends were going to. So I texted every single one of them. None of them answered the phone. And I remembered that my one friend had shared her location with me before. So I went and looked at her location and where was she at in my boyfriend's house. So while I sat at home crying that whole week, he was throwing parties and cheating on me with my friends. And when we went back to school, he acted like we were never in a relationship. Part 2 about my shitty
Storytime of how I caught my dad and my stepdad sleeping together. So a little background information, my mom and my real dad got a divorce when I was around 4. So like the typical, on the weekdays I'd be at my mom and on the weekends I'd be at my dad's. Then when I was around age 6, my mom married my stepdad. And since they got married at such a young age, I called my stepdad dad and my real dad dad. This story ends up with a lot of confusion and chaos, so just get ready for that. So everything started to get a little weird when my stepdad went to go drop me off at my dad's house one day. My stepdad actually went into my dad's house and they talked for about like 5 hours. You see, I went to sleep and then the next morning my stepdad and my dad were both making me breakfast. And then I overheard my stepdad on the phone with my mom saying that he had an overnight shift. So I didn't say anything because every time I tell my mom something, she ends up believing my stepdad anyways. Because I mean, my stepdad's always right? Anyways, the next time that he dropped me off, my stepdad ended up staying again. Then I ended up walking into my dad's room seeing both of their pants off. I'm running out of time, like for part 2. Part 2 of how I caught my dad and my stepdad sleeping together. Continuing on with the story, I had asked my dad a question, so I walk into his room and I see my dad and my stepdad's pants off. One was laying down, the other was... You guys get the point. My dad quickly jumps off the bed and he jumps up so fast that he falls off the bed and he goes, honey, it's not what it looks like. And then my stepdad said, get out. So I thought it was funny, so I took a picture and I sent it to my mom because I knew she wouldn't believe me if I didn't have proof. And then she went crazy and tried to kill both of them because, he cheated on her. Then she ended up in like a mental hospital. They declared her crazy or something. So I don't see her anymore. Here's a story time of how I got catfished by my best friend's dad. This story literally ends up taking a turn for the worse, so honestly, be prepared for that. So it was around 6th grade and I had just moved schools and I put on my Snapchat story swipe up to be friends because I didn't really know anybody around me, so I kind of had no friends. So this one dude swipes up and he's like, hey, you're really cute, we should talk more. And I was like, aw, thanks, what'd you look like? He sends me a couple pictures of himself and he was so hot. So I was like, yes, let's talk more. So we started snapping so much that within a couple hours he was #1 on my best friends list. He would never show his entire face, he would always show like his jawline and stuff like that. Or like pictures of his underwear. Literally all I ever got was jawline pics or underwear pics. I literally got so comfortable with this dude, I told him stuff that nobody else knew. I told him I loved him and that I was catching feelings. A couple days later, I stayed the night at my best friend's house. She had softball practice, so I stayed at the house with her dad. Once we get back to her house, after dropping her off at softball practice, he said he had a big surprise for me. I'm running out of time, like for part 2. Here's part 2 on how I got catfished by my best friend's dad. Continuing on with the story, my dumb self didn't really think anything of it, so I followed him to his room. He closed the door behind me and he told me to be quiet. I was like, okay, what is this surprise that you have for me? He pulled out his phone and he showed me his Snapchat. And it was the Snap account that I have been snapping for the past couple of weeks. And the same guy that I confessed my love for. Mind you, I'm pretty sure her dad was in his mid-40s at the time. And I was only 12. He told me to give him my phone because I needed to be punished for my actions, so I did. I only did because I was honestly terrified and I had no idea what else to do. He told me since I told him I loved him, I needed to show him that I loved him. And he starts to take his pants off. I turn around and I run out the room and out the house. My house was only a couple houses down, so I ran all the way down to my house and told my mom everything that happened. I don't know if she really believed me, but he ended up convincing us not to press any charges against him. And I was never allowed to see my best friend nor him ever again. P.S. I never got my phone back and we had to move again.
Story time about the guy who was obsessed with me. We're gonna call him Ryan. Well, Ryan had a crush on me for a long time. And one night, one of our friends asked me to go to a party with them. And Ryan was going to be the DD. And everything was good. We were all having a great time at the party. Well, Ryan and I went off to one of the bathrooms. And we started making out. And while we're making out, he goes, I really want to fuck you, but I can't. And I'm just like, why? And he said it was because he couldn't get it up. And obviously he was embarrassed about it, which is understandable. So I left the bathroom and didn't plan on telling anybody about it. Until I walk over to a group of my guy friends, and they're telling me that apparently Ryan told everybody that we fucked. So at that point, I didn't give a fuck, and I told him what actually happened, aka that he couldn't get hard. And apparently he was mad at me after that, but I had no idea. So he said, do you still want me to take you home? So I said, yeah. And now that he drove me home, he knew where I lived. And then I got a text from one of his friends, like for part 2 about the guy who was obsessed with me. So like I said, as soon as I got dropped off, his friend Ella texted me. And she was like, oh, it was so wrong for you to say that he couldn't get it up and a bunch of other nonsense. And I just brushed it off and I was like, whatever. So I went to sleep and the next morning that I woke up, so my house had like a gate to get in and there were locks on it and all the locks were broke. And my stepdad also saw that he slashed my fucking tires. I ended up telling him everything that happened that night and my stepdad's 32 and Ryan's 22. So they're only a 10-year difference. He basically gave me an option. He was like, either I can call the cops or I can go beat this kid's ass. I was like, okay, just call the cops. So we called the cops and they ended up catching him on the surveillance camera, like of him breaking the locks and slashing my tires and everything like that. So then they found him and arrested him. And let me get this straight. If he just wouldn't have lied about it, then it would have never came out that, like, he couldn't get it up. He just had to go and tell everybody that we fucked.
Storytime, the biggest lie I ever got away with as a teenager.
So my sister and I were going to spend the weekend at my stepdad's, and I asked my parents if I could bring a friend. My dad said he didn't care, and my stepmom said no. And my parents were really strict. But obviously I did not listen. So I invited my friend, and her parents were also really strict. So we came up with this elaborate plan that I would ask her parents and tell them that it was a surprise for her. And they believed it. So the day comes whenever we're supposed to leave to go up to my stepdad's. So, we get off the bus, walk to my house, and my stepmom was asleep because she worked night shifts. So I was able to sneak my friend through the house to my bedroom. Little did she know she was going to have to hide in the closet. So my stepmom came in and needed to borrow a pair of socks for work. And I was literally guarding the closet with my life. And she goes, "Get away from the closet, you're acting so suspicious. What's in there?" Like for part 2, by the way, Stacey and Candace, if you see this, my bad. Okay, part 2, sorry for keeping you guys waiting. So she literally pushes me out of the way, goes and looks in the closet, and stands there for a whole ass minute. And me, I'm over here having an anxiety attack. My sister's looking at me, making like hand gestures, basically saying, "What is she looking at?" And I'm literally sitting there, and I get to peek in the closet, and my friend is not there. And I'm like, what the fuck? Where did she go? And then she starts moving things around in the closet. So she didn't see anything, and she goes to walk out of my room, and she goes, "You guys are so weird." And I run over to the closet like, where the fuck is she? And she pops out of this box that is literally in plain sight and goes, "Is she gone yet?" And trust me, I know this doesn't sound like a big thing to get away with, but whenever you have strict parents and they're looking for somebody in literally a 5-foot space, oh honey, this was a big deal for me.